It's 2025.
Mhm.
If you're not using an AI in your business, you need to have a really, really good think about things. Helping someone to have that inner belief that actually they are a business person. Why am I making these decisions? Unlock that potential in the business that just means it's going to fly. And that is a magical moment. And that's the bit that brings me joy. And that's the bit that I love about my job. The ideas of the youth are amazing. We don't listen to enough of it. Where I am today has been a culmination of everything I've done for the last 40, 50 years of my life. Right now is me having all of that inside me.
Perfect. So no regrets. Let me know when you guys are ready. How are the levels sounding? Looking?
All looks good. Yeah, all sounds good.
Cool. Yeah. You recording or? Right. Okay.
We'll slink up into the background if we're not here, Karl.
Okay. Cool. Let me know when to go, or you're already recording.
Recording.
All right. Cool. Okay, Karl, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, really good. Thank you, yourself.
Yeah, great, great. Thanks for coming in
No, no.
into the studio.
It's great. What a lovely studio.
Thank you, mate. Where I'd like to start, Karl,
Yes.
is coaching. What is business coaching?
Oh, what a question. What is business coaching? Um, it's a really interesting one, that, and it's one of those industries that's sort of understood but not understood. And I think I do a lot of work with some of my American colleagues, and if you take business coaching in America, it's quite widely understood what business coaching is.
Mhm.
Um, if you take the UK, it's certainly growing, and I think coming out of the roots of executive coaching,
Mhm.
it's very understood. You know, you've got a senior executive in a team, wants to get more performance, better perhaps skills, personal management. So executive coaching is understood. When we get to what I call business coaching, which is looking at the granular detail of working with a business owner, a business owner's team.
Mhm.
So they might be anything from a solopreneur right up to a medium to large size SME.
Mhm.
Then business coaching becomes a little bit more, "Ooh, what exactly is it? What's it going to do for me? What's in it for me?" as everyone says.
Yeah.
So I always liken it to a sports analogy.
Mhm.
So if you took a sports person that said, "Look, I just want to unlock my potential. I've sort of nearly won a few times.
Mhm.
I know I'm better than I am. I've got a few hang-ups about the sport I'm in. I've
Mhm.
got perhaps a few beliefs that I need to work on.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I've got the right team around me,
Sure.
um, but I've really got that yearning. I really want to go out there and do it."
Mhm.
And that's business coaching. It's, I have a degree in psychology, so a lot of the work I do is unlocking that potential,
Mhm.
helping someone to have that inner belief that actually they are a business person,
Mhm.
working with them to achieve the goals that they've always seen are out there somewhere, but they just haven't quite got there.
Sure.
And that's the bit that brings me joy. And that's the bit that I love about my job.
Yeah.
And that might be anything from, as I say, working with a solopreneur to say, "Look, you've had this big dream. Where is this big dream? Oh, it's all in my head. Well,
Mhm.
shall we commit it to paper?"
Sure.
Because there's a lot of statistical reviews around. If we commit it to paper or electronically, let's say, save the
Sure.
planet electronically. If we commit it actually into writing,
Mhm.
there's a great chance that's going to survive first contact with the world.
Sure.
If we don't commit it to writing, it's just a bit of a dream, an idea that's hidden up here.
Mhm.
So if we work on that concept of you idealize something, you think about it,
Mhm.
then you can visualize it, what's it going to look like.
Mhm.
And that's where we map it out. Then we might verbalize it. So tell people, tell your team, tell those around you, tell your partner, husband, wife.
Mhm.
And then it materializes. And that's
Sure.
something called an IVVM. You idealize it, you verbalize it, you visualize it, you verbalize it, and then it materializes.
Sure.
So that might be early stages, just getting those early stages of belief and vision.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And what would the process be? Let's say we were going to put it to paper. Would it just be writing it down, or is there a lot more to it than that?
Look, the fact that we're writing something down means we've engaged parts of the brain that we
Mhm.
haven't engaged before.
Sure.
The fact that we're mapping it out is superb.
Mhm.
It means that we've now got, again, let's use an analogy, sat nav
Mhm.
or GPS, whatever you want to call it. We're traveling from the north to the south of England.
Mhm.
We're going to a certain place in London. We put it into the sat nav and off we go.
Mhm.
It's there. It's logged in.
Yeah.
Whatever. And we start traveling down the M6. And like we know happens every now and again, it might be a bit of a little accident or slow traffic, or
Mhm.
we want to take a comfort break.
Sure.
So we pull off and we go into the service station.
Mhm.
And that sat nav does that funny little thing, doesn't it, where it spins around and then it redirects you and it gives you a new time. We're still going to London, we're still going to the same address,
Yeah, yeah.
but we've just had to deviate for a while.
Mhm.
And that's the same in business. You're going to get knocked sideways.
Mhm.
World change is faster paced than it's ever been before. We know that. There's things being thrown at us from all angles.
Mhm.
They're challenges, but if we overcome them, then guess what? We're going to achieve our goal. We're going to carry on and achieve our goal. And
Sure.
that's the idea and process of mapping it out.
Mhm.
What does it look like when we map it out? And you know, the process of planning is actually more important than the plan itself,
Sure.
because planning stimulates growth, it stimulates ideas, it stimulates everything.
Mhm.
So that's where we start.
Perfect. And how often do you reckon people are in those service station moments throughout
Oh,
working with you?
great point. Yeah. Hopefully, quite a few,
Mhm.
because I want to stimulate thought with them. I want to
Mhm.
challenge them. As I say, we use the acronym of NICE. Nothing inside me cares enough.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be nice. I'm not just going to tell you, that's great. I'm
Mhm.
going to challenge you. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, is this the best thing for you? Given what you wanted, given in that direction, that street in London you wanted to get to,
Sure.
are we still going in the right direction? Is this the best route to go?
Mhm.
Or do we need to recalculate and change?
I mean, how often do you think, and this is like anything in business, I think a lot of time people get sort of shiny things happening. How often do you think those original plans almost go astray and people actually want to go and do this now or want to go after that thing there? So, how often does that happen?
It's a really good question, that one. And I do a lot of work around psychometric profiling, and we use a system called DISC,
Mhm.
DISC. And we understand from that certain personality types are more prone to chasing the shiny ball.
Sure.
Certain personality types are very rigid
Mhm.
and actually quite opposed to change.
Mhm.
But there's a two-edged sword there, of course, because you could argue that if I'm that rigid and there's all this stuff getting thrown at me and I'm sticking to that one goal,
Sure.
is it the right goal? Am I actually now affecting my business?
Mhm.
Whereas actually, has there got to be that flexibility there? The old Bruce Lee willow concept,
Yeah, yeah.
bend like the willow. So I think there's a bit of that we've got to do. So when I start working with a client, the first thing we always do is run a psychometric profile
Okay.
to understand and help them understand themselves. Why am I making these decisions? Why do I get distracted so much?
Sure.
Why do I chase the shiny ball down the street?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Or why am I so rigid and fixated that I'm like an immovable object and nobody can move me?
Mhm. And in what situations do you think business coaching is absolutely needed and it works? It really works.
Well, I'm going to say every situation. um, and I agree with. I actually stand by that. I'll tell you where it's not needed. It's probably not, and this is a personal opinion. This is a, it's my belief, so I'm going to share it. Um, where I believe sometimes it's not needed is when really that business is almost ready for the defibrillator. That business is wrecked. It's
Sure.
it's broken.
Mhm.
It's completely broken, and perhaps because of ego,
Mhm.
dare I say,
Yeah.
or because of that classic comment, "I've invested all this money into this; it has to work."
Mhm.
And they're watching this business just go downhill. That's
Mhm.
very difficult to pull that business back.
Mhm.
But where it really works is just someone that wants to get fitter, someone wants to go to the gym, someone wants to
Yeah.
work out a bit more, someone that goes back to what I said earlier, unlock that potential in the business that just means it's going to fly.
Sure.
And that is a magical moment.
Perfect. And let's say I was a business owner, I came to you. I'm making a reasonable amount of money, but I really just want to scale up. I really want to grow the business. What advice would you give to me there?
So first thing I'll do is remove that word advice.
Okay.
So as a coach, we never advise.
Mhm.
That's a consultant. They'll come in and tell you what the time is and then charge you for it.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, Then you've got your mentors, which has probably been in your industry. Let's say you're in the, I don't know, you're in this Google related business. Well,
Mhm.
funny enough, I spent 20 years in a Google related business, so I'm now a mentor.
Mhm.
I'll come to you and I'll talk to you about the good old days when I was doing it and share with you some experience, which is great because you're going to get immediate access to my experience.
Sure.
As a coach, it's probably actually quite handy that I don't know too much about that. You're the expert.
Mhm.
I'm bringing objectivity.
Mhm.
So going back to your question, the first thing I'm going to ask you is why? Why do you want to scale?
Mhm. Okay, in this situation, I want to scale because it was my dream to have a massive business that did really well, made loads of money. That was my dream.
If we'll scrape away again,
Okay.
why? What's this loads of money going to deliver? What does loads of money actually mean?
I guess it would mean freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah.
And is that something that's key driver for you?
Yes, let's say it was. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'd probably rip apart freedom. What
Yeah.
does freedom really mean? We know
Yeah.
Mel Gibson's version, but what
Yeah.
is what does freedom really mean?
Uh, I guess the freedom to make decisions, to take time off if needed, that flexibility side of it is probably what I would mean by freedom if I was
Okay.
saying.
And have you ever calculated how much money you'd need to take that freedom?
No.
Right. So we'd probably do that.
Yeah, yeah.
We'd probably do a little mini calculation, stick a number on a piece of paper.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 10, whatever, whatever.
Mhm.
Stick it on a piece of paper and say, right, if the business is currently here
Mhm.
and you want the business to be there,
Mhm.
let's work together on the bit from point A to point B. How are we going to get the business from point A to point B?
Mhm.
Because I go back to a business, running your own business is about delivering more to your life. It's about, instead of you being the slave to the business becomes the engine to deliver what you want.
Mhm.
And I see that all the time with my clients.
Sure.
Only a few weeks ago, one of my clients, we had our one-to-one coaching session. He said, "Have you got a couple of minutes?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I have. Always got a couple of minutes." He said, "I want to show you this." And we walked down the end of his garden. We went through a little fence, and he just bought himself a brand new car, the car that he'd always wanted to buy. Beautiful, bright blue convertible car.
Yeah.
Just joy.
Was that his goal at the start when he spoke?
Yeah, he loved holidays. He loved cars. No, it wasn't all materialistic. There was other things for his business. We had to get the business right.
Mhm.
And like any conscientious business owner, that was down the list.
Mhm.
But it was that little personal thing.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not talking Ferrari here. We're just talking that little thing that said, I just want to get something to that reward for me.
Perfect. Yeah.
And those are the sort of things that are fantastic to see. But and it goes back to in the 20 something years I've been sort of working within this industry, I remember we put in place quite a complex financial structure for quite a large business. Predominantly, a lot of my businesses are around the 1 million plus turnover.
Okay.
Um, and in fact, because of my own corporate background, some of my businesses are quite larger than that. I'm working with I'm doing quite a lot of executive coaching at the moment with one of the top supermarkets in the UK and
Mhm.
a couple of quite large banks I'm working with as well.
Sure.
But we go back to this client, and he wanted to. We were working with him. We put this complex structure in financial structure, which allowed him to really scale the business up. So he needed some investment in there, and with a bit of a banking background, I was able to help him pull that together. Um, and I always remember we sat down and I said, how do you feel about all this? This is all going through. This is so exciting. And he said, Carl, he said, do you know what I keep thinking? I keep thinking about my feet in the sand. And he
Oh,
said,
yeah.
just scrunching my toes. And I said, go on, tell me more, because this is really interesting. And he said, what we've done here with this business, it's payback time for my family.
Mhm.
He said, and I keep saying to my family, just keep imagining scrunching your toes in the sand, because we're going to be spending a bit more time on holiday. Dad's going to be back in the family unit.
Yeah.
And I know it's been a bit bumpy over the last year, 2 years, but
Mhm.
I'm back. And I always think about that,
Yeah.
toes scrunching in the sand, which I'm probably doing it now, actually,
Yeah.
probably
That's what I
scrunching,
want.
scrunching my toes in the sand. So they're the sort of things that, the client of mine that wanted to sell their business, and, we ended up getting them so much more than they ever really thought they would get,
Sure.
not through negotiation, through belief.
Mhm.
Their belief was that. I challenged that belief,
Mhm.
really challenged that belief. And then the end result was they got a multiplier much more than they probably would have got.
That's great. It'd be great to learn or hear a little bit more about your clients in terms of, let's say, where you started with them, what their goals were, and
Yeah.
really where you've taken them. If you could give me any examples,
Yeah,
that'd be
yeah.
great.
I mean, look, because of confidentiality, I'll never share names
Yeah, yeah.
and what have you. But um, yeah, I mean, I have one of the clients I went into. I'll give you a couple of really nice little examples here. Um, I was doing some work with a client that was in the care industry,
Okay.
and when we first got into that client, this family run business. doing it for all the right reasons. I mean, people in care are in it for care,
Mhm.
and that's a generalized statement, but at the level they were at, they were clearly doing it for the right reasons. And I
Sure.
met him and I met his family and we got discussing. Um, if we first started there, it wasn't about the money, it was about the care provision, it was about making sure they can do the right things, but budgets were tight.
Mhm.
You get a set amount of money from the government to care for these people. So we looked at how we can get more budget to be able to do some of the things we wanted to do. The first thing we found was a stream of money that hadn't been collected, that should have been collected,
Right.
that they were entitled to, but it just wasn't happening. So we grabbed that amount of money. Excuse me, and then we went on to look at reallocating some of the space in their building to be able to do more of what they did.
Sure.
In the last few months, we're now potentially talking of a multi six-figure sum to move them down the road and have them relocated and have a brand new purpose-built care home.
Hi everyone, just a quick break in the show just to say thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe because it really helps us grow the channel. This podcast is brought to you by AdPeople, a digital marketing agency that's been helping small to medium-sized businesses grow for over 2 decades. If you're looking to get more clients for your website, then AdPeople's team of experts can help you make that happen. Drop them an email at consult@addpeople.co.uk for a free, no-nonsense chat about where you are now and where you want to be. Don't forget to mention the Eardley Bird Business Podcast is how you got there for exclusive offers and discounts. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Wow. So
Transformational stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Transformational.
So even the stuff before that was great because it's like the stuff I guess as a business owner, you're sometimes a bit blindsided about what you could be doing. It's good having that objectivity, as you said before, people coming in from the outside that see things that maybe you don't see as a business owner. So having obviously different income stream, like stuff they didn't know they could get, having additional space in the building that they hadn't thought about using, all great things. But then to be able to almost what involvement did you have with the multi six-figure deal? Is there much that you
Yeah. So he brought it to me and said, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then I realized very quickly another one of my clients is exactly in the industry around planning and valuations and
Mhm.
that. So I
All
put
right.
him in.
Perfect, yeah.
Then we put them in touch with another client that's financially backed. So we looked at the finance of it.
Mhm.
Then I went to another client who could help with understanding the whole concept of the property side.
Sure.
So I brought in some of my clients that were experts in their field
Mhm.
and said, hey, would you help another client? They've all met because I run a lot of client events where I bring all my clients together so they
Love
can
that.
meet each other.
Okay.
So you've then got, clients at the smaller end of the scale working with clients at the bigger end of the scale who they just wouldn't have known. But there's that
Sure.
mutual trust and there's that cohesion.
Mhm.
Because I guess that my coach introduced me. It's a safe introduction. We haven't got to go through the whole dance. We know who we are.
Perfect.
And I was so pleased last week. I got a little text saying, we're on it now. We're on it.
Yeah.
If it comes through, it's truly going to be transformational.
Mhm. No, that sounds amazing from where they were and to the
Yeah,
point where they literally didn't have loads of budget to spend.
There was no budget. There was
Uh,
nothing. No,
yeah,
it was a tight, very tightly run ship that
Mhm.
had no margin. Also, when I first met my client, he was in the business 7 days a week.
Oh wow, okay.
Because of care, including sleeping over at nights.
Mhm.
As he said a month ago to me, he sometimes finds himself, 3 days a week,
Sure.
but he sometimes finds himself actually thinking, is there something else I should be doing here? Because we've built a great team around
yeah.
him. We've got a young manager now that's taking over. We've found a brand new income stream, which was one of his dreams. He'd always dreamt of running some training.
Okay.
So we've now increased what we introduced and developed. We've got that from zero.
Mhm.
That's now bringing in a nice 5-6-figure sum every year, which is allowing him now to become more enriched in what he does.
Sure.
And that's a small business.
Mhm.
If we fast forward to a very large business, and I'll throw one of those lovely big numbers at you,
Sure.
a £1 billion business, which
Mhm.
is one of the large supermarket I'm working with.
Mhm.
Only this week, I was working with their senior team, and we talked, and it was great to see. I had a little bit of a moment actually. I was talking to my own coach about this. I had a little bit of a moment where I sat back and thought, "Oh, I have a bit of imposter syndrome here because of is this all really happened in the work that we've been doing? Because there's such a big organisation, you
Mhm.
get that immediate feeling,
Sure.
oh, they'll know this stuff." but we said, guys, since we last met, in the last session since we met, let's write all the wins on a board. Let's see what we've won at. What have we won at?
Mhm.
And it was lovely to see we're more cohesive as a senior team. We now have better belief in the brand.
Wow.
Self-development is risen. And then there's the monetary side.
Mhm.
And I had a bit of a moment where I stepped back and I was standing in the middle of the room and they were all around I'd got them into teams, small teams working. I must admit, I had a bit of a moment. I looked around, I thought, oh, I've been part of this. This is really good, actually.
Yeah.
This is great to see these. And I got some texts on the way home from some of the guys in there. And, these are big players. These are big corporate players. But yeah, so I've got to back myself and
Sure. Yeah.
I consistently invest in myself. So I invest a lot of time and money into my own education.
Mhm.
And here I am at the tender age of 59, still investing a lot of money into my own education.
Yeah.
That's reading, podcasts. I go onto a morning coaching call 3 times a week.
Oh, okay.
I attend conferences. I speak at conferences
Mhm.
because I just want to keep challenging myself because I've got to be on my A game to be
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to deliver.
Yeah, to work with
It-
those sort of
You got it.
people,
Yeah.
you got to know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Perfect. So, where I'd like to jump in would be, let's say I was one of those businesses around just over that million mark, where like sort of the bottom end of where you tend to work with. What are the sort of common things that you tend to see that people are kind of falling down on that aren't necessarily got the right attention to certain areas? Anything like that that comes to mind?
Yeah. Again, great question because it's really relevant. You start a business, okay? You have this idea. I'm going to sell microphones. There we go. I'm going to go for it. This is it. Well, of course, the first focus is I need to sell some microphones.
Mhm.
So I need to go and find some clients.
Yeah.
So you run around like a crazed person thinking, I've got to sell, I've got to sell, I've got to
Yeah,
sell, I've got to sell. And rightly so, because you've got to get income in to pay for the bills, to pay for the supplier, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So planning and all that stuff goes right out the window.
Mhm.
Business plans, don't need a business plan. I
Mhm.
sell microphones. Am I studying the profit really hard? Probably not.
Mhm.
Do I know the numbers in my business? Probably not.
Mhm.
Do I know who my best clients are? Probably not, because I'm just selling at the moment. And rightly so, rightly so. So the first thing we do is almost just get them to step back a moment. Let's step back and let's analyze what it is you're doing. I had a really unique chance. I worked with a Dragon's Den winner,
Okay.
which we couldn't announce at the start when we started working together. And then as we got into our relationship, they mentioned actually we've won because it's all pre-recorded, of course. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, if you imagine we were working in a bit of
Sure.
a time lapse,
Mhm.
we could only work with them I could only work with them up until the point that the TV show went live, because then the Dragon brings in their own team,
Right.
which is
Makes sense.
really interesting.
Yeah.
But one of the first things we identified was what they thought was their most profitable and best-selling product was actually, yes, it was their best-selling product, but it was actually their least profitable product. And in
Right.
some instances, on some channels, it was losing money.
Right. Okay. It baffles me that you wouldn't know that, but again, it's
Yeah, not many businesses that look. We talk about a structure. So I'm part of a global coaching business called ActionCOACH, and
Mhm.
um, it's a phenomenal. It's a 30-year-old business started by one guy, Brad Sugars, and Brad's a great guy, still around, lives in Las Vegas, an Australian by birth. Phenomenal character,
Mhm.
phenomenal character, and you know, if you look at the language of business, it has to be numbers.
Mhm.
Um, and I go back to my days of working in corporate banking in London, where everyone talked turnover, turnover. Look at the size of my turnover. Look at my turnover.
Yeah.
And then we sort of pivoted a bit to profit, or, are you profitable? But again, in the UK, we're a bit unhappy about that, saying we're profitable. Oh
Sure.
gosh, I'm making profit. But then, of course, it comes back to cash flow, doesn't it?
Mhm.
When you meet a client or a potential client where they're saying, I'm not sure we can meet the salary run this month.
Mm.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you're turning over X million. Woo, that's the pub talk.
Mhm.
You're profitable, but you're not sure you can make the salary run this month.
Mm. Yeah.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into that and understand why you can't make the salary run.
Mhm.
So with any client, I go right back to the basics, and we work to a structure of steps, and that first step on that rung, there's 6 steps, but that first step is: are you clear on the vision and the direction of this business? Are you clear where this business is going?
Mhm.
Are you clear about your financial numbers?
Sure.
Are you clear about your time mastery?
Okay.
And are you clear about the levels of service that you give to your clients.
Mhm.
So I go back to my big supermarket. One of the things that came out, we did a psychometric assessment on all the team.
Mhm.
We analysed it. We looked at it because you can only manage what you measure. So if you measure it, you can manage it.
Yep.
And that's when the patterns start to occur. And we noticed within the senior team, there's a real gap around customer experience.
Right. Okay.
And one of the things that had already been brought up was customer experience. Isn't that interesting? The correlation between there's a gap in the senior management around customer experience, i.e., around customer focus,
Mhm.
because they're very driven insofar as around the concept of business development, quite rightly so.
Mhm.
And that's quite common in management teams. You know, you'll
Sure.
see a management team that has a certain focus where it's got to really have that spread.
Yeah.
So I go back to that small business. You've got to, I call it mastery level. The structure calls it mastery level. Mastery of your goals and your vision. Have you got a plan?
Mhm.
Even if it's one sheet of paper, even what you've written there, is it just one sheet
Yeah.
of paper? There's your plan.
Yep.
Mastery of your numbers, mastery of your time, and mastery of your service.
Mhm.
Let's get that sorted. That's the foundation. That's the Lego building block at the bottom.
Sure.
I think
So
other
that's,
bricks are available.
so that's step one.
Yeah, step one is get that done.
Okay.
Once we've got step one and we're controlling it,
Mhm.
then we can start to look at step two. And step two is marketing,
Okay.
creating a really comfortable, consistent income.
Mhm.
When I meet most businesses, they've got the roller coaster of doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we made loads of money. Oh, we haven't got any money. Oh, we made loads of money. Oh, we haven't got any money.
Yep.
I met a group of guys and really just starting out in business. Great. They're in their early 20s. Phenomenal guys. Very energetic. And I won't say too much, otherwise they'll be able to work out who they are. But in the business they were in, they were just doing that roller coaster of doom, you know, high, low, high, low.
Mhm.
And I said, when you're at your highest, what's changed? What's bringing in this massive income? And they said, oh, we create an offer. And when we do this offer, we go out to the community that we're in.
Mhm.
The community really take us up on this offer,
Sure.
and we boost the business to a phenomenal. Okay, I said, do you run this offer every month? No, 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 it wouldn't be right. And I said, oh, is that fact or opinion?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's opinion. But also, I love the answer when people go, "No, I think that's a fact." Well, hang on, it's an opinion because you just said I think it's a fact, so it has to be an opinion,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I said, "Should we test it and see if we ran the offer every month, what would happen?"
Mhm.
And guess what? It happened.
Yeah.
So they've now got a trajectory of repeatable income that's
Mhm.
coming in that allows them to reinvest and redo that. So step two is stabilizing your income.
Mhm.
We look at your marketing channels. You know, I always ask any business, how many strategies have you currently got to go out there and bring clients into your business?
Mhm.
And most people go, I do a bit of advertising, or I do networking. Networking, great.
Sure.
Give
Yeah.
me the return on investment of your networking. Let's say you're a member of, again, I won't mention anything, but let's say you're a member of a networking chat that might cost around 800 to £1,000 a year.
Mhm. Yeah.
What's your return on investment? Oh, you get lunch. Yeah, but what's, great. But
Yeah.
what's it brought you?
Yeah.
And what's it going to bring you?
Mhm.
Or, I don't know if it does. Well, let's study it.
Mhm. Yeah, these I suppose a lot of businesses don't track that properly, do they? Don't actually look at all the different channels, figure out what's bringing in what. It's very interesting when you get into the
Yeah, it is because marketing's an investment. It's not a
yeah.
spend, it's an investment.
Mhm.
If I'm investing £1, what am I getting back?
Mhm.
Um, I did a lot of work with a very small, and it's only because it's a natural interest of mine, a sport that I had a real interest in, and we did some work with this small club just around COVID and after COVID, and we investigated where the clients were coming from, and when we found out where the clients were coming from, which was through Google Ads at the time,
Mhm.
we just did an investment, which is for every, I think we were investing £10 to £14,
Mhm.
we get around £1,300 back.
Right.
So
Spend more, mate.
switch it on, switch it off, switch it on, switch it off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be surprised. I had a similar story. I went to an event recently, and we were exhibiting there. And we're speaking to the company next to us, and he was talking about his Google ads, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it was making him. It was making him. Long story short, it was making him a load of profit, and he was only spending like £200 a month." And he was like, "Oh, do you think I need to work with you?" I was like, "Maybe you start by just spending a bit more money there first, and see if it makes you some more
Absolutely.
money. Then maybe look at working with us." But I couldn't believe that he was like, yeah, he was doing all these other things like exhibiting and whatnot, but he's got something that's making him a lot of profit, and he's not thought to spend any more money. It does baffle me when that
And
happens.
that goes back to mindset.
Mhm.
So it's what I call a scarcity mindset, as opposed to an abundant mindset.
Sure.
If you know that your investment of £200 a month is going to get you, I don't know, £1,000,
Mhm.
does that work for you, given your profit margins? And if so, why are you not spending £1,000? Can your systems cope with the uplift in
Sure.
business?
Yeah.
But of course, we have that scarcity mindset that says, well, I'll almost gamble 200 on that and see what happens.
Yeah.
Which goes back to level one, which is, have you got a clear plan
Mhm.
and an understanding of your numbers, and it's something that you're working towards? I
Perfect,
think there was
yeah.
a Harvard Business Review study that said the top 3% of all performing companies and people on the planet have a clear and written business plan.
Mhm.
The next 27% have a bit of both,
Mhm.
and the final 70% are sort of walking around bumping into walls and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we can't get into the top 3%, let's at least get way up the 27%.
Yeah.
You know, and that's me because I've come from a very corporate background. But my mum owned a shop, my
Mhm.
granddad owned a shop, so I've come from a family that had shops.
Sure.
We were business owners. My dad had his own business,
Mhm.
so I saw parents that ran their own businesses that had that sort of balance between spending time with me as a kid and my sister, and also spending money and having nicer things and going on holidays, but sometimes working on a Saturday or sometimes working in an evening. I saw that balance.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always equilibrium,
Mhm.
but I saw that balance. So I think, it helped me understand that when I went into corporates, because you're very protected, you're very bubbled, aren't you, in a corporate?
Sure. Yeah.
My computer breaks, I make a phone call,
Mhm.
I need some budget to go and spend on that. Well, there you go and spend your
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
And then you start your own company. And, I've had my own company for 22 years.
Mhm.
It's a different thing. If your computer breaks, it breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got something else on the list
Yeah.
to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay. So step one's basically clear. Make everything clear.
Mastery. It's that
Mastery.
mastery. Yeah.
Step two, marketing. What would be
Step three would be get your systems in place.
systems? Okay.
Yeah, your systems allows your a repeatable. It just allows you, those systems. And remember that systems are everything from having a meeting
Mhm.
with your team, or having a meeting with your suppliers, or having a meeting with someone.
Mhm.
Might be your business coach, might be your accountant. Speak to your accountant every month.
Sure.
Know your numbers. Whoever, but have that meeting. Right through to systems such as an AI that you can put in place right now, which will help you. I was with a client last week. They both agreed we're just not very good at taking notes. So we took an AI that does a transcript service and put it in
Perfect.
place.
Yeah.
Which actually, I go back to my care home, and that was a great one we did there. One of the things they have to do is every time they have an interaction with one of their residents,
Mhm.
they have to take notes.
Right. Okay.
So for years, it was all written notes.
Sure.
We discussed an AI that would take care of that. Game changer.
Yeah.
Because those notes have to go off to the local government body anyway to understand that they're caring for them in the right way.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolute game changer, saving time, money. So
Mhm.
that third rung on the ladder is all around systems.
Sure.
Let's get your systems in place.
Mhm.
Let's put some in place. Recruitment. What's your recruitment system like? What's your retention system like?
Mhm.
Do you perhaps even record a video on a phone just before a new starter's coming, saying, "Hey, welcome to my
Yeah.
company. Looking forward to meeting you in 2 weeks. Oliver, can't wait to meet you." How's Oliver going to feel? It's going to feel amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got a video from the owner of the company,
Mhm.
and it's a video
Yeah.
that you can send from your phone.
It's perfect. I had another podcast about 5 months ago, I think it roughly, and she was saying all about how for recruitment especially, she does a series of videos and then makes it really straightforward to have someone onboard it.
Superb.
And it's made a huge difference for her in terms of onboarding new staff, because before it'd be like people might feel a bit neglected, they're not seen to straight away. It just allows that to be a lot slicker, and that
Yeah.
technology helps with that 100%.
Your typical recruitment process or onboarding was, welcome to the business, Oliver. I've got to pop out today, but there's your laptop. Toilets are over there.
Yeah.
Go and chat to some people, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, great. That's a great day one. Thanks for that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get yourself some lunch, and
Yeah.
So I think systems is where that sits. Then we move on to people. That step 4 is people.
Okay.
Building an absolutely amazing team. And that's where a lot of young businesses in their embryonic stage, businesses at that sort of lower income stage struggle, that revenue stage, because how can I afford a member of staff?
Mhm.
So sometimes we have to ask the question, how can you afford not to have a member of staff?
Sure. Yeah.
Are you working on your business or are you working in your business?
Mhm.
What are you best at? What do you enjoy the most? So we have something called a skill fund matrix.
Okay.
What are you absolutely great at? And what do you really enjoy?
Sure.
So let's get you to that position.
Mhm.
So the owner of the business most likely is probably the best salesperson in the business.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
had to sell that microphone on day one.
Mhm.
So if that's where you want to be, let's elevate you back up there. Let's get you some admin supports.
Mhm.
Bang, let's bolt that in.
Yeah.
Let's get you perhaps a VA, a virtual assistant. Right, let's bolt that in. Let's get you some help with marketing. Right, let's slot that in. And look at the world right now. We can get support from anywhere on planet Earth.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
Made it a lot easier, hasn't it?
yeah, and I had this discussion with a client last week. You know, we're going to take on someone. We need to put them in the office. Why do you need to put them in the office? Why do you even need to retain this?
Mhm.
Sorry for any office owners there, but why do we need to retain this right now?
Yeah.
What's the benefit? Think about your client. Think about this. Sorry, think about your business. Think about your business. What are the business needs right now?
Mhm.
Does it? How many times do clients come and visit you in your office? Never. So
Mhm.
why have an office? Why have you got this office for 2, 3 of you?
Yeah. Perfect. So
So
we
we're
got
going those 4 steps now.
yeah. What would be next?
If those 4, and they
Yeah.
don't have to happen sequentially, they can happen, I might meet a business that's got the best systems you've ever come across.
Right.
So
Okay.
perhaps we need to work somewhere else on those 4 steps.
Mhm.
If we keep on at those 4 steps, we start to then see synergy
Mhm.
at level 5, which is what I call the well-oiled machine.
Okay.
It just seems to be working. It's just seemingly good.
Mhm.
Then step 6 is the owner might go off and perhaps invest in another business,
Mhm.
might become a serial entrepreneur, but you're now getting some serious results. Might franchise out, might open
Mhm.
another branch.
Perfect.
Now we've got something going on. And we call those our 6 steps and massive results.
Perfect. I love that. That's great because I reckon there's definitely someone listening to this right now that thinks actually I'm weak on that area or step number 2 or 3. It's great to see it in its actual form, right, where you would go. Perfect. That makes perfect sense to me. One question I have is around basically is something a little bit different in terms of technology because you kind of touched on it there a little bit. I wanted to get your thought on AI within sort of what you're doing. I know you've done a few bits and bobs there in terms of how you're using it, but what's your thoughts in general?
It's 2025.
Mhm.
If you're not using an AI in your business, you need to have a really, really good think about things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's 2025.
Mhm.
AI is a tool that will do the grunt work for you.
Mhm.
There's somewhere in your business right now, you can use an AI.
Mhm.
Whether it's from note transcription, whether it's from helping you write a podcast, whether it's from helping you create a proposal, right now there's an AI that will help you. And right now it's only your mindset and your belief system that's holding you back.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think a lot of the time, the conversations I have been having with people has been either a bit of, I'm a bit scared of it
Yeah.
in terms of what it's going to do for my business. Is it going to make me obsolete, etc. Or, and then on the flip side, there's people like, I love it. It's just going to mean I can spend more time with my customers and I can use that to do different bits and bobs. So I guess again, it's a lot of it comes down to mindset, I think.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, I mean, for example, us as a business, we've just been developing an AI. It's completely finished now. It's ready for the
Oh,
public.
wow.
It's just gone through beta. Basically, we did a survey, I think it was last year or the year before, of all of our clients that run Google ads. So you can imagine they're spending money on ads and they're running campaigns to get leads. And we found that 50% of them were losing 50% of the leads. They weren't
Wow.
answering the phone or replying back to an email. Obviously, a huge problem.
Wow.
So what we developed is basically an AI, lead nurturing
Oh,
AI.
okay.
So what it'll do, it'll text them, it'll say, "Oh, just received your inquiry. What is it you were looking for?" It might have a conversation with them, or it might email them back with bits and bobs. So you can kind of program it for your business. But yeah, I think I think businesses should be thinking about exactly as you said. How can I use AI to make my life easier and not just
Yeah.
shy away from it? But yeah,
I think we're at the stage now in business, and again, I say this as someone in his very late 50s that really, potentially could say was shying away from technology. Right now, if you get the Terminator piece out of your head,
Yeah.
right now, um, there is an AI that will make something in your business work smarter.
Mhm.
There is. It's just that you're the barrier.
Mhm.
And I often say to when I'm talking at events, just make sure you're not the barrier to your success of your own business.
Mm.
You're not the person that's almost holding back your business.
Mm.
There's a lovely piece around mindset. We start as a student, and then whether you're at school or university, then we go on and get our first job and we become an employee.
Mhm.
Then we might become a junior manager, and then we might become a senior manager, and then we might become a team head, and then we might become a department, a director,
Mhm.
and then we might venture out and become a business owner.
Mhm.
if you look at that, so many people get stuck at that employee level. So they have an employee mindset.
Sure.
They're not making decisions as a business owner would make a decision. And I get that. You know, I started out 22 years ago. I was probably still making decisions that I was making as an employee when I worked in a big bank in London,
Sure.
as a senior team member there, with a team of people around me.
Mhm.
I wasn't making decisions like a business owner.
Mhm.
And you've got to really get there quickly. And you asked me a question early on, which businesses need a business coach? I can genuinely say this. I would have loved to have had a business coach
Mhm.
22 years ago.
Yeah.
Loved that. Someone that would challenge me. So if we go back to the psychometric profiling,
Mhm.
I sit on DISC as quite a high D, which means I'm quite driven.
Okay.
I'm quite determined.
Mhm.
I know where I'm going. I know what I want to get.
Mhm.
Um, but it would have been amazing to have someone that said, "Hey, I'm hearing you, but are you sure that's the best decision today?
Sure.
Is that the decision you want to make?" I had a client phone me yesterday, raging about an employee, raging. One of those great employee conversations. That's it. They're going, "Oh, that's it. Right. I've been to HR. That's it." So I said, "Can we just leave it overnight?
Mhm.
Carl, what am I? Just leave it overnight and let's speak tomorrow morning. Sleep on it.
Mhm.
Okay. Is it anything that's damaged the company? No. Is it anything that's detrimental to your client base? No. It's a behavioral thing. So let's sleep on it overnight
Mhm.
and let's go again." And it's amazing sometimes that when you just challenge someone
Mhm.
and throw a challenge in there, that perhaps the outcome becomes better for everyone and
Yeah.
the decision becomes better.
Mhm.
And it has become better this morning.
Okay,
The,
good.
the, the, the immediate anger and rage is gone.
Yeah.
Now it's a logical business decision.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
this person's had a blip. Yes, they've upset you, but are they the right person for the role that you wrote? Yes, they are. Right. So
Perfect. Yeah.
let's just work with them. Yeah. And again, hold the mirror up to yourself as a business owner. Is it something that you've done that could have
Mhm.
triggered that in the first place? Is
Sure.
it a process that you haven't got in place? Is it a system that you haven't got in place?
Mhm.
Are you close enough with them, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
So those sort of things are really important. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. What I'd like to discuss is a bit more about your journey.
Oh, good Lord.
Before becoming a business owner, before jumping into running your own business, what did that look like? You mentioned corporate and
Yeah,
others.
look, I grew up in a family, as I said, that had mum and dad both had their own business. Mum had a clothes shop.
Mhm.
Mum was brilliant. Her dad had a baker's in East London. Um, so they were very wheeler dealer. My mum
Sure.
on my mum's side were very, we'd buy stuff, we'd sell stuff, and she had a beautiful clothing shop in a part of Essex where I grew up. And I used to go on the buying trips with mum. If I had a bit of spare time, I'd just jump in the car with mum. We'd go into East End of London, go to all the fashion houses, and she'd buy clothes. And I really liked this I used to watch the negotiation, the
Sure.
haggling.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I thought, oh, I might buy and sell some stuff. And it was funny. I was thinking about the Bill Gates concept, which I wouldn't mind a slice of what Bill Gates has done, but um, Bill Gates, and please don't think I'm comparing myself to Bill Gates for anything. My ego is just not there. Bill Gates used to buy, I was reading once, he used to buy the ex-presidential election campaign silver buttons and then sell them as silver and stuff like that. So
Right. Okay.
he would turn X into 2X and
Mhm.
X into 3X. And when I used to go on the buying trips with my mum,
Mhm.
because I was a wholesaler, I'd buy some clothes and then sell it to my friends, which was great. It was just phenomenal. My friends used to come to me and buy outfits. The only thing was, if you've ever seen things like the In-Betweeners, we ended up all wearing pretty much the same stuff. So
Yeah.
that didn't work out too well. We go on holidays and all have the same clothes on. And I just got the real hag. I really enjoyed buying and selling.
Mhm.
So it was 1980s. It was Essex. There was only one thing to do: go and sell some cars. That was the thing I had
Perfect.
to do: get some
Yeah, yeah.
white socks and sell cars.
Yeah.
And I went. My first job, I wrote to. I remember this. I wrote to all of the dealerships in the whole of the south of England that sold BMWs, and I asked for a job. All of them.
Right.
And
Okay.
one came back to me and said, "Come for an interview. If
Yeah.
you think you're that good, come for an interview." So I did. And I met a guy, Richard Beverley, who was the sales manager. Still highly rate that. What a man. And he said, "If you think you're that good, come back tomorrow and sell cars." So I did.
Sure.
And I worked for BMW. I got to number 2 in the UK working for BMW in the UK. Amazing training system.
Mhm.
We had a training passport. We used to
Mhm.
have to go on training sessions all the time. They had a system whereby it was very corporate, very corporate,
Mhm.
strictly corporate. Dress code, all that sort of stuff. Loved it.
Mhm.
Then I went out to the States and I worked in North Hollywood selling BMWs,
Wow. Okay.
which was amazing. That was great. That taught me another level of selling.
Sure.
I thought I was amazing. Then I got taught a different level. Stayed out there until legally I was obliged to come home under visa rules. So I did. Just said that for the camera there. And I came back and I did a stint with Jaguar,
Mhm.
Aston Martin, which was luxury end of the market,
Mhm.
and then finished a piece off doing some work with Volkswagen Group,
Mhm.
where I got to number one in the UK. And I thought, yeah, I'm done now. That's where I wanted to be. I got to number one in the UK.
Sure.
That's as good as it gets. Um, and I said, right, time for a real job almost now, So I went into banking and finance,
Okay.
and ended up finally working in London in Threadneedle Street, heading up quite a big team in Royal Bank of Scotland Group.
Mhm.
That was good.
Sure.
In the corporate banking side, worked for a great guy there, taught me. In fact, I met him in London a few weeks ago. We just had a coffee and a chat, and
Mhm.
stayed in touch with a lot of those guys. So that piece working in Royal Bank of Scotland Group was phenomenal, because the way in which you saw a corporate work, we were a
Mm.
small Scottish bank
Sure.
that then bought a large bank,
Mhm.
and then the rest was history. And I know, there were all the bits that went on with RBS Group and all that sort of stuff. I did leave before all that happened, obviously.
Sure.
That was amazing. From just, you know, we were in a team that was working with startup business. I was there when the dot-com thing happened.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was amazing to see these businesses flourish and grow. And what really excited me when I did that, and I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking about what was it that excited me. It was just watching someone who had an idea to grow a business,
Mhm.
that when they got the right help
Mhm.
and the right advice, the business grew
Sure.
and everyone won. And it isn't always about the helicopters and islands and, Ferraris. It isn't always about that. It's
Mhm.
about sometimes the simplest of things: personal achievement,
Mhm.
growth, development as a person, family, what I can leave as a legacy, all that sort of stuff. And that fascinated me. When you got the right situation, the right environment,
Mhm.
how you could help people grow.
Yeah.
But when they didn't get that help, they just didn't grow. Um, so when I left the bank, it was brilliant. We had a lovely arrangement. I left the bank, and then my first client when I started my business was back at the bank. They
Really?
became my first client. So
Okay.
I did a lot of corporate training with those guys around
Sure.
sales performance, team performance management, and leadership.
Mhm.
And then I got a couple of other banks came to me and said, "Hey, you're doing this, do it for us." And I
Yeah.
did. There was Barclays, Lloyds, all the other banks I started working for. And then after about 2, 3 years, I thought, oh, my only exposure is in banking and finance here. Like any, what would, if I'd have had a business coach, they would have
Sure.
said to me, "Are you sure this very narrow market you're in, is that good for you?"
Mhm.
2007 banking crash.
Yeah. 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 I was gonna say.
Fortunately, I'd
Probably well
coached
timed.
myself into getting some other clients.
Mhm.
So I then started to widen out
Yeah. Yeah.
and say, right, banking and finance can't be my only
Mhm.
place.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the rest was history. And then I just kept on this journey of self-development, met Action Coach along that journey, took on that business. I'm a business owner, like everyone listening here, hopefully.
Mhm.
So I'm a realist. I don't sit in a little bubble that says, this is how it is. I'm actually a very realistic person.
Mhm.
I'm a family person, married, 2 sons.
Mhm.
We've got a nice lifestyle. We live in a lovely area.
Mhm.
And I actually, all the things I talk about, I do with my own business. So
Mhm.
I don't talk about theory. I talk about realism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I found interesting there is you worked early on in big corporate, basically huge car companies, right? So systems is the area that I picked up there. So how important do you think working for those sort of companies in terms of your knowledge of systems and that side of what you do now? How important do you think that's been?
It's a really good point, actually. You just stimulated a thought in me, what you said. The first thing that came to mind when you just said that, actually, for me, was it taught me about focusing on the controllables.
Mhm.
And I know that probably isn't that related to systems.
Mhm.
If I go back, I can still remember this number. When I first started working for BMW, we had 155 cars to sell new. That was it. Not 156, not 154,
Sure.
155.
Mhm.
So we had to have a really good sales system in place to sell 155 at the maximum profit that we could.
Sure.
Um, so we only ever focused on the controllables.
Mhm.
We couldn't focus on the uncontrollables. We couldn't think, oh, we're not going to get enough profit out of 155. We had to maximize what we had.
Mhm.
So every sale had to be the right sale.
Sure.
Now, you can only sell something once, in theory.
Yeah.
So we had to just make sure we were doing what we did. The systems were superb, and I was I met some old friends of mine in for a drink last week, and all three of us started in the car industry in the 1980s. All three of us, and we've all known each other ever since, and we still laugh about it. We used to have a T card system, a manual T card system. So we had a sales administrator,
Mhm.
and she was amazing. The T cards would show when a car was being built. So this is, pre sort of most of your computer systems here. When the car was being built, so that manually the chassis number would be written on, the T card would be slotted back in. So if you imagine it was a car that got slotted into a metal file,
Yeah.
under warnings of threats of violence, do not touch the T card,
Yeah.
because if the T card went missing, we've lost the car. We now don't
Sure.
know where the car is. So the system was so manual and repetitive,
Yeah.
but it worked.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder, Rolodex systems, where you used to have a Rolodex
Yeah.
system, it was manual and it worked.
Yeah.
Business cards, it was manual and it worked.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we can't have progression, but
Sure.
I think it was just ingrained into me that get a system and make it work.
Mhm.
Just make it work.
Yeah.
And stick to the system, refine the system, look at the system. Is there some better way I can make this system work better for the business?
Mhm.
But systems, look, as a business owner, you manage the team manages the system, and the system runs the business.
Yeah.
So if we get the systems right, the business will be great.
Mhm.
It's like all this we're sitting here today. There's a system and a process that
Yeah.
you've got to make these work,
That's true. Yeah.
and it's evident by the professionalism of it. So
Mhm.
the system works, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So focus on the controllables, and I did not even comprehend the level of popping in a card into.
It was hilarious.
That's
And it was
amazing.
hilarious because we had a salesperson that used to go off piste every now and again. He was quite a wild guy, and
Always one sales guy.
he took one of the T cards home in his pocket for the weekend, not through any other reason, that he just used to take them out, even though he was told not to take them out of the office. And I must admit, I've never seen such an explosion of people on a Monday morning, because this poor admin lady had been spending all weekend looking for this card, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But he'd had it in his jacket pocket because he'd been talking to a client about it, and slipped it into his pocket, took it home, and
Oh,
the
God.
system got broken.
Oh no.
Yeah. The system got broken, and
Yeah.
there was quite a volatile exchange on
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other question I have is around RBS, and when you were there,
Yeah.
what made you leave?
Um, I realised that my entrepreneurial gene
Mhm.
was finally coming through,
Sure.
and actually, I realised that some of their systems,
Mm.
and it's that classic when you're at corporate. If I were doing it myself, I would have done it like that.
Sure.
Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form bigger or better than a large corporate,
Yeah.
but I just thought my entrepreneurialism, and it
Mm.
was all around the training. We used to go on lots of training in the bank, and some of the training was average, some of the training was stunning,
Mhm.
and some of it was poor.
Mhm.
And I thought, if I were doing this training, I'd make it excellent. And I remember I approached the guy who was always doing amazing, and I spent a day with him. And just said, "Can I spend a day with you?" He wasn't employed by the bank; he was an external.
Mhm.
And I said, Roy, his name was, and I said to him, "Can I spend a day with you, Roy? Just learn about what you do." And I did. I spent a day with him, and then I was fascinated by, he drove this. He had a Jag,
Oh, right.
as
Right.
Scotsman said, a Jag, and it was a beautiful Jag. And he drove me around in it, and he showed me what he did on a daily basis, and he explained his lifestyle. And I thought,
Yeah.
that's really excited me. Something's flicked a switch here.
Sure.
Um, and I left no money, nothing. Had to buy my own car, buy my own laptop.
Yeah.
Go down to a local retailer and buy a laptop. And I realised that's what I want to do, and it gives me the freedom to be me.
Mhm.
I'm a high D in disc, which means I like to be me. I like to do what I like to do.
Mhm.
It's been bumpy, yeah, of course it's been bumpy. I'm a realist.
Sure.
I've learned a lot. But it's really accelerated, and
Mhm.
I'm in a position now where I think where I am today has been a culmination of everything I've done
Sure.
for the last 40, 50 years of my life. Right now is me having all of that inside me.
Perfect. So no regrets.
Oh no, things I've done differently, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And I go back to a coach or a mentor or someone around me would have potentially accelerated.
Sure. Yeah.
Might not have learned as much, but I would have accelerated.
Mhm.
So actually, I probably would have learned as much. But if I'd have allowed, if my mindset would have allowed someone to challenge me earlier on,
Mhm.
I think I'd have made some different decisions. But
Yeah.
no regrets, no, far from it. You know, my sons now see what I do for a living. One of them's very commercial, so I can see him going a bit of a similar way. The other's very academic. But you can see there's that commercialism in both of them. Both of them understand money. Both of them understand what money is, how you spend it, how you don't spend it. And it, yeah, I'm an advocate. I think we should be doing more of this in schools. I think we should do more of this at an early age.
Yeah.
Because the real talent's right out there right now, isn't it? You know, the ideas of the youth are amazing. We don't listen to enough of it. In fact, in Action Coach, we've just launched a program called Yes, which is about young entrepreneurs.
Right. Okay.
And I'm now an accredited Yes program deliverer, so we can go into schools and help young entrepreneurs. So we're going to be doing some of that later in the year.
Perfect. Yeah.
To unlock that potential.
Is that just all over the country?
Yeah,
Or
it's all over the world actually, because Action Coach is in 84 countries all over the world.
okay.
Phenomenal system. And Brad, who owns Action Coach, wanted something put back into schools and said, we're just not teaching that entrepreneurialism at an early age.
Yeah.
You know, I watched my youngest son, he'd buy something. He was Lego. He was buying Lego and, you know, doing what other people did, where breaking down the sets and reselling and trading and buying stuff and trading. He became a trader.
Yeah.
Well, my granddad was a trader. My mum was a trader. I guess I've been a bit of a trader, and now I'm seeing it on the 4th generation of trader.
Yeah.
It's a great skill.
Great. Perfect. Well, I think that's a lovely place to start.
Okay.
Stop. Thank you, Karl. I
No,
really
thank you.
appreciate the time.
Thank you. Lovely. Thanks for your time.
It's a really good chat, like
Is
Karl.
that all right?
Karl, I could listen to you.
Yeah.
Tell my wife that, would you?
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you could do us a huge favor and like and subscribe, it allows us to get you more amazing guests as well as share more practical tips on how you can grow your business online. If you are looking to grow your business online, then Ad People are here to help. They offer free, no obligation consultations that allows you to speak to more people who know what they're talking about. Simply email consult@adpeople.co.uk or see the link in the description. Other than that, I'll see you next time.